Hello, and welcome to this first lecture on regulatory compliance automation in this course, AI for Risk Management and Compliance Excellence. So, in this particular section, we will talk about how can you use AI for excellence in regulatory compliance automation. And there we will talk about in this particular lecture about the RegTech platforms with AI engines that can scrape and interpret global regulatory updates. So how do you think these RegTech platforms with AI engines can scrape and interpret global regulatory updates? Any thoughts? Using RegTech platforms with AI engines is one of the most efficient ways to manage regulatory compliance across jurisdictions. Jurisdictions meaning geographies, spaces, especially in highly regulated industries like finance, healthcare, insurance, and telecom. Now, what do these platforms do? They scrape, analyze, and interpret global regulatory changes and help organizations like yours align their internal policies and controls automatically and proactively. Now, how does that happen? Let's take a look at the steps how this happens. So the first step would be to define regulatory domains and geographic scope, and that you need to do before deploying the platform, obviously. Now, what are the different kind of domains and geographic scopes? You could define them by industries like finance, healthcare, insurance, telecom. You could define them by jurisdictions like EU, US, India, SEBI, Middle East, etc. Or you could also choose topics like GDPR, AML, KYC, ESG, or you could use a combination of that. So you need to define geographic domains and geographic scope and the domains. And an example of this would be to say track all updates in any or to any anti-money laundering regulations in the EU and US. So you are used to topic and geography and to track this, right? So that's how you can define regulatory domains and geographic scope. Then you connect to the global regulatory feeds. And how do you do that? Now, these regulatory platforms tap into thousands of regulatory sources, and some of them include like regulatory bodies, SEC, FCA, MAS, RBI, ESMA, EBA, government gazettes like US Federal Register, EURLEX, India Gazette, and legal databases like LexisNexis, Westlaw, JD Supra, etc., etc. So you connect to these regulatory feeds, and then these platforms scrape and ingest data using AI and NLP continuously. So that's what how regulatory platforms tap into thousands of regulatory sources. Then these platforms use natural language and NLP and machine learning to automatically read, scan, and structure the legal text, identify key provisions and clauses, detect affected industries and geographies or business units, and summarize changes in plain, simple language. Now, an example of an output would be a new directive requires that customers identity verifications every 6 months. Another could be Rule 4.1 updated to include ESG disclosure by mid-sized firms. So, like this, you get the updates on the regulatory things happening. The fourth will be to map regulatory changes to internal policy, and there the RegTech platforms use AI and knowledge graphs to cross-reference regulatory changes with internal policies and the documents and highlight where updates are required and flag gaps or non-aligned procedures. An output of this could be reading like this. If the EU GDPR adds stricter data transfer rules, the system identifies and flags outdated internal data retention policy. So a change and its impact on internal policies being compliant is detected in this way. Then the system routes alerts and insights to relevant stakeholders And these are like compliance officers, legal teams, risk and audit managers. It creates tasks and responsibilities like update policy ABC by June 30 based on FCA regulation XYZ. It reviews vendor contract for new data protection clause could be another one. And it most of these platforms integrate with Jira and ServiceNow for workflow tracking, and GRC tools like RSA Archer, Metric Street, etc., etc. So that's how these RegTech platforms notify compliance owners and assign action. Then these RegTech platforms track implementation and ensure audit readiness. And how do they do that? So once the changes are implemented, your updations in policies, etc., based on the regulatory updates, the RegTech tools store a compliance trail for audits, and they generate the dashboards and reports showing regulatory changes tracked, internal updates completed, and areas still pending. And this is how it helps you track implementation and ensure audit readiness. So these were some basic features of the RegTech platforms. Let's take a look at some key features of advanced RegTech platforms. And they can do AI-powered text reading or phrasing or parsing, and in which they extract key clauses, deadlines, and obligations. They can do semantic matching, in which they map external rules to internal policies and procedures. They can do risk scoring, where they can flag high impact changes needing urgent attention. They can automate the workflow, where they assign owners, track policy updates, and log actions. And the multilingual NLPs are for regulations in local languages like German, Mandarin, etc. And they also have audit ready logs where they have a full history of alerts, decisions, and remediation. So these are some of the key features of advanced RegTech platforms. Then what are the top RegTech platforms using AI for regulatory intelligence? Let's take a look at them. So there is Ascent RegTech, that is known for being for AI-based rule mapping for financial firms. Then there's Clause Match, that has intelligent policy management and collaboration. Then there is Symphony AI Sensa for AMI, anti-money laundering, fraud and compliance AI. Then there is Comply Advantage for real-time anti-money laundering, KYC risk monitoring, and screening. Cube for global regulatory intelligence and obligation tracking. Quantified for entity risk scoring using external regulatory data. And Regology for regulations to policy mapping using AI. So these are some of the top RegTech platforms using AI for regulatory intelligence. What is the business impact of using such RegTech platforms? First, you get faster response to regulatory changes. And the benefit of that is you have reduced compliance lag and legal exposure. Then also it impacts by reducing your manual work. So you save time 40 to 60% for legal and compliance teams. Then you are better prepared for audits. And there that happens because you complete traceability and version control in your systems. And it also makes you more agile in terms of policy management, and business stays in sync with fast moving rules. So these are the various business impacts. Let's also look at you can also integrate RegTech with your internal systems. You can do integration with policy repository by syncing them with SharePoint and Google Drive. Then you can use compliance tools like RSA Archer, Metric Stream, and you can also have integration with ERP, HR, finance systems by routing policy changes to impacted department through SAP and Workday. So that's how the integration with internal systems can happen. So what is next? So we will look at the second lecture of regulatory compliance automation, and there we will talk about using document classification and entity recognition to match rules with relevant company policies. So let's take a look at that in the next lecture. So thank you so much for watching this first regulatory compliance automation lecture. I hope you continue to learn new things. continuing to enjoy, and I do look forward to see you again in the next lecture. Please feel free to message me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer your questions, and do download the PDF file to take a look at anything that you need to.